1960s and 70s, enormous strides were made in the field of adult education. The federal government made significant contributions to adult education in these years, especially in the areas of vocational and technical training. In addition, the development of the community college system helped to make educational opportunities more readily available to adults at the local and regional level. The 1980s and 90s saw increased privatization of adult education and the transformation of adult education by technology, with computer training becoming a major adult education industry. The economic, technical, and social changes in Canada, and the shift from a resource-based to a knowledge-based economy, has also forced new directions for present-day adult education, which according to some has led to a demise of the adult education movement in Canada. This video will provide an overview of adult education in Canada from 1960s to present. During this video, please reflect on the following analysis questions. What are the important milestones in the history of adult education from 1960 to present? What impact have these milestones had on adult education today? How has federal and provincial government involvement impacted adult education in Canada throughout the years? And is there still an adult education movement in Canada? The 1960s can be seen as a period of important federal initiatives. Canada's international status in the field was demonstrated in 1960 when UNESCO's Second World Conference on Adult Education was held in Montreal. The same year, the Technical and Vocational Training Assistance Act led to an infusion of funds by the federal government, who took on the provision of technical and vocational education, rather than leaving it to the initiative of the provinces. Another important area of federal contribution flowed from the War on Poverty approach, which began in 1965 and spanned a range of community development, local initiative, and social development activities. In 1969, the Official Languages Act also led to an explosion of second language teaching across the country. In the late 1960s, the community colleges were created by provincial governments in response to a need for continuing education in academic, vocational, and general education areas, and to complement the education offered at universities. Around the same time, the structure of adult education in Quebec also underwent a fundamental reorganization. In the early 1970s, the federal government initiated annual grants to labor education activities. At the same time, the provinces also began to play a more prominent role in adult education. In 1972, the UNESCO report entitled Learning to Be was issued, which endorsed a lifelong learning strategy calling for increased attention to adult education as a matter of priority. The Alberta government also initiated its important Further Education Council policy in the 1970s, which is widely recognized as having greatly strengthened adult education in that province. Expansion of the university system and the development of parallel college systems changed the nature of higher education in Canada. By 1976, every province was operating a binary system of universities and colleges. The 1980s saw the downsizing of both the role and the size of government, and of some public institutions. The National Training Act of 1982 signaled a policy of privatization of vocational and technical training, with the private sector being involved in training and human resource issues. The creation of labor force development boards transferred power over vocational and technical training to provinces, management, and labor. As a result, many adult and continuing educational services had to become self-supporting, which led to the abandonment of some adult education activities, especially those to the disadvantaged. Community colleges were severely affected by diversion of workforce development programs, including adult basic education and second language learning, to the private sector. During the 1980s, federal authorities also publicly endorsed a policy of lifelong learning and supported prior learning assessment and recognition. In the 1990s, technical developments, including the expansion of educational broadcasting and the increasingly widespread availability of personal computers, had profound effects on the nature of programming for adult learners. There was a transformation of adult distance education from print-based to online, and computer training became a major adult education industry. In addition, the utilization of computers as a means of delivering educational services made significant changes to the teaching methodologies employed within adult education. During the 1990s, there was also growth of popular education, and a wide variety of volunteer organizations, churches, and other community groups were encouraged to be more active in adult education programming. The annual participation rate in adult further education courses in Canada before 1960 was about 4% of the entire adult population, and by 1992 it had grown to 33%. The economic, technical, and social changes in Canada resulting from increased globalization have had a considerable effect on adult education in Canada. The shift from a resource-based to a knowledge-based economy has also forced new directions for adult education. According to Selman and Selman, the social reform tradition of adult education in Canada has faded into the background as the field becomes more professionalized and institutionalized. They list 4 trends which they assert have brought about the adult education movement's demise. The first one is a general retreat from collaborative activities and collective action. The second, the structure, values, and rewards within universities and other institutions of higher education. The third, the shift from adult education to lifelong learning as an organizing concept. And the final trend that they list is the movement becoming less Canadian. Please reflect on the following synthesis questions. What are the similarities and differences of the adult education movements throughout history? What moments in Canada's adult education history do you feel are most important and have had the most significant impact on adult education today? And what evidence is there to support the demise of the adult education movement in Canada? And do you agree with this evidence?